The sun had barely risen when the base gates opened and she walked in. No fanfare, no orders, no greeting. Just a girl in a plain shirt and worn boots, carrying a small duffel bag that looked heavier than her own body. The guards at the front? Post glanced at her confused. You got clearance? One of them asked. She said nothing, just handed over a folded paper. The guard opened it, squinted, frowned, then looked at his partner. Go call command. She waited without a word. No movement, no questions. Like she'd done this before, but no one had seen her before. Her name was registered barely a string of letters that didn't match any record, any history, any background. Just Alara, no last name, no address, no next of kin. They gave her a bunk in the far corner of the women's barracks, the one next to the broken window. No one said much. She wasn't unfriendly, just blank. The kind of blank that made people nervous. On her first morning, the drill sergeant called her up like everyone else. Line up. Today we run, crawl, climb, and bleed. If you can't do that, leave now. No one moved. Not even her. The training began. The rest of the recruits were loud, cocky, sweating bullets. She didn't say a word. She just moved, ran 5 miles without slowing down, climbed the wall with bare hands after her gloves slipped off, crawled under barbed wire like she was born in the dirt. The sergeant stared as she passed each stage faster than anyone else. Still no words. That evening in the mess hall, the jokes started. What is she? A mute ninja? She probably bribed her way in. Bet she's one of those sad cases they let in for diversity points? She sat alone at the end table, eating slowly, ignoring them. But one recruit, Lance Corporal Maya, didn't like the silence. Maya said, walking up. You think you're better than us, or just too scared to talk? Alara looked at her. Just looked, then returned to her food. Maya shoved her tray. I asked you a question. Still no answer. The tray clattered to the ground. Alara picked it up, not angry, not afraid, just calm. The calm scared Maya more than rage ever could. The next day was combat drills. Partnered pairs. Maya got paired. With Alara this'll be fun, she whispered to the others. They circled each other. Maya struck first, a fast jab. Alara dodged it like it came in slow motion. Then, without warning, she spun, swept Maya's legs, and pinned her down in a move none of them had seen before. It took 2 seconds. What the hell was that? Someone muttered. The sergeant walked over, staring hard at Alara. Where'd you learn that move? No answer, just eyes, cold and distant. Maya stood up, embarrassed. She wanted to fight again, but something in her back told her not to. Alara didn't fight to win. She fought to end it. The whispers started growing. People began avoiding her, not because she was weak, because she was unknown. Dangerous in a way they didn't understand. One night, someone slid a note under the sergeant's door. She doesn't belong here. She's hiding something. The sergeant forwarded it to HQ. HQ called the general. The general didn't like mysteries on his base. He asked for her file. There wasn't much. Just a few vague documents with heavy black lines. Redacted details. Missing dates. A blurry photo of a young girl, maybe 7 or 8. Same eyes. Same blank stare. The stamp on the page said, Ghost clearance only. He picked up his phone. Get me Major Lutz. Within the hour, Alara was called into a private room. Major Lutz stood behind the table. 2 guards at the door. Sit, he said. She did. We have some questions. You're not in trouble, but we need to know more. She looked at him, waiting. What's your full name? Silence. Where were you born? Silence. Do you understand English? A slow nod. Why don't you speak? Her eyes flicked to the camera in the corner, then back to him. Are you afraid? He leaned closer. Or is it that someone told you not to? Nothing, not a blink. He slid a photo across the table. Do you know this man? A bearded soldier, his face half hidden behind sunglasses. She looked at it, then looked away. No answer. Lutz leaned back. Frustrated. You know, you can't stay quiet forever. Sooner or later, someone's going to demand answers you can't ignore. She stood up. Slowly. The guards moved, but she only walked to the door, opened it herself, and walked out. The general watched all of it on the monitor. He didn't like what he saw. That night, someone snuck into the storage room and found her gear. Nothing unusual, until they checked the inside of her duffel. A small piece of torn fabric, black, blood-stained, with military initials, GK21. They brought it to the general. He stared at the cloth for a long time. Where did she get this? He asked. No one had an answer. The next morning, Alara was missing. Her bed made, her boots gone. Panic spread fast. The security cameras showed nothing, just a glitch at 3:27 a.m. An hour later, she walked back through the gates. Silent, holding a small box in her hand. She handed it to the guard. For the general. She whispered her first word. The guard froze. She walked away before he could say anything. The general opened the box himself. Inside was a single dog tag, rusted, burned, with a name he hadn't heard in years. Private R. Maddox. He stumbled back. That name was from a mission classified and buried 15 years ago. Operation Black River. Everyone presumed dead, all except one, the child. He picked up the phone again. Bring her to my office now. She entered 30 minutes later, silent again, standing tall. Sit, he said. She remained standing. He reached into his drawer, pulled out the same torn fabric. Where did you get this? No answer. He slammed the desk. Speak. She slowly reached for the hem of her shirt. The guards flinched. She pulled it up just enough to reveal her stomach. A faint brand, like something burned into her skin years ago. The symbol. A code. Not just any code. A unit designation .GK-21, but the real GK-21 wasn't a unit. It was a ghost project, a hidden lab, a child soldier program that was terminated in shame. He looked at her face again, and suddenly he knew. She wasn't just from that program, she was its last survivor. He stood up slowly. You're her. Still, no words. Just a tear falling from her eye. He didn't know whether it was from pain, anger, or exhaustion, but it told him everything he needed. He picked up the phone. I want the council alerted. She's here. She's alive. And someone has been hiding her all this time. She didn't flinch, but deep in her eyes, something dark stirred. Not fear, not hate, but a quiet warning. The storm hadn't even started, and when it did, she wouldn't be the one to run. The general stared at her. My God, he whispered. The entire base was on edge after that moment. Word spread faster than any official report could. The girl Orua was no longer just the silent recruit. Now, she was a question mark no one wanted to answer. A shadow that walked the halls and made even the boldest men lower their voices. The general didn't sleep that night. He sat in his office, lights off, watching the old files play on a dusty screen. Grainy footage, children running drills. Screams in the background, men in black uniforms. The GK-21 program, he remembered. When it was first proposed, a group of genetically selected, psychologically broken children, taken from war zones, rebuilt into weapons. The program had been shut down for being too cruel, too unstable, and everyone involved had sworn under oath that the test subjects were unfit for society and dealt with accordingly. But Alara was living proof someone had lied. Next morning, she returned to training like nothing happened. No special treatment, no speech. She just picked up her gear and stood in line like every other recruit. But no one stood near her. Even Maya kept her distance now. The other recruits weren't laughing anymore. They were watching her the way people watch a ticking bomb, quietly and from far away. During combat drills, the instructors made her sit out. Observation duty, they said. But it was clear they didn't know how to handle her. She stood, under the shade, arms crossed, eyes locked on the fighting. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just watched. Later that afternoon, she was called to the general's office again. This time, there were no guards, just him. He looked up when she entered. Close the door, he said. She did. Sit. She remained standing. He sighed. Fine. He leaned forward, clasping his hands. Do you remember me? Silence. He opened a drawer and placed an old photo on the table. A group of soldiers, a burning village behind them, and in the corner, a tiny girl, no more than 6, staring at the camera with dirt on her face and a bloodied hand holding a broken doll. I was there, he said. I saw what they did to you. Her gaze dropped to the photo. For the first time, her hands trembled. He noticed. You don't have to speak. Just listen. He paused. They told us you didn't survive. They said the last child from Black River bled out in the truck before it reached the checkpoint. Her eyes lifted slowly. But you did survive, and someone picked you up after that. Not to rescue you but to use you. Her lips tightened, but she didn't speak. I know that brand on your stomach, he continued. They called it a control mark. Every child who resisted the program got one. Most didn't survive the branding. He leaned closer. But you did. She shifted her weight slightly, as if that memory still hurt. Why now? The general asked. Why come back here? Why this base? Still no answer. He frowned. Are you here for someone? Something. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded paper. She slid it across the table. He opened it. Coordinates. Remote desert zone restricted. This is a ghost zone, he muttered. No one's allowed near it without triple clearance. What's there? Her jaw tightened. Her hand moved again. This time she placed a small metal button on the table. A military tracker. Broken, bloodstained. The general stared at it. Whose is this? She finally spoke, her voice dry like it hadn't been used in years. He didn't make it. The room fell silent. The general lowered his head. Who was he? She looked down. He taught me how to smile again. Then she turned and walked out. That evening, a tech officer reviewing security footage of the training ground paused at a strange frame. The footage glitched, but, in that frozen glitch, for less than a second, Elira's silhouette stood with someone else beside her. But when the clip played normally, no one was there. He zoomed in on the frame and sent it to command. You need to see this. Meanwhile, in the barracks, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept hearing the echo of Elira's fighting style in her mind. It wasn't normal. It wasn't trained. It was ingrained, like breathing. She got up and walked quietly to Elira's bunk, empty again. This was the third night she'd vanished from her bed. Maya followed her instinct and slipped out quietly. She found Elara behind the storage unit, kneeling beside a worn-out punching dummy, but she wasn't punching it. She was whispering to it. Maya stepped closer and heard the words, "You said we'd be free. You promised if I got out, you'd follow." Elara stood and slammed her fist into the dummy so hard it snapped off its base. Maya gasped. Elara turned. Her eyes met Maya's. For a moment, Maya expected violence. But instead, Elara simply said, "He didn't deserve to die in a cage." Maya whispered, "Who?" Elara hesitated, then walked past her without another word. The next morning, the general received a file from Washington. Top secret. Inside were old experiment logs. Test subjects from Project GK21. Each file had a photo. Some were just children. Others had no faces, just numbers. Test 11A, Test 11B, Test 11C, and Test 11F. That one had a red circle around it. No photo, no birth record. Just the word Elara written in shaky handwriting. Under it, a final note, escaped during collapse. Presumed dead. The general's hands shook. He called his assistant. "I want surveillance on the entire base. Every camera, every angle. Someone else knows she's here, and they're going to come for her." That night, the base alarms went off. An intruder had been spotted near the motor pool. The cameras glitched again. When security arrived, there was no one there. But one of the jeeps was missing, and a recruit was found unconscious. Near the gate, his ID tag missing, the general rushed to the command room, shut down the perimeter, locked the roads. But before they could act, a small explosion occurred near the west wall. Not enough to injure, but enough to distract. By the time they checked the dorms, Elara was gone. Again, but this time her duffel was still there. Inside was a note written in rough ink. "I'm not running. I'm going to finish what they started. If I die, tell them I kept my promise." There was no name, just a second set of coordinates. Near the ghost zone, Maya saw the note. She looked at the general. "You're going after her, right?" The general nodded. "If she finds what I think she's looking for, we'll need to be there before the council finds out. Because once they do, they'll wipe it all again." Maya asked, "What's at that place?" The general looked grim. The graveyard of her past, and maybe ours too. Elsewhere, in a hidden underground bunker, Elara walked through a shattered hallway. Rusted doors, flickering lights, chains on the floor, broken cameras hanging from wires. She moved without fear. She had been here before. She reached a sealed metal door and placed her hand on the scanner. To her surprise, it beeped green. Still recognized her after all these years. The door hissed open. Inside was a room filled with empty beds, surgical lights, and one single chair in the center with dried blood under it. Her hand shook. She stepped toward it, and there, carved into the metal floor by a trembling hand, was a name, Elara. She fell to her knees. It was real. It wasn't a nightmare. She wasn't crazy. This was where it happened. Behind her, a faint noise, a breath, a whisper. She spun around. Fisp, ready. A figure stepped out of the shadows, masked, silent, and then spoke. "You weren't supposed to come back." Elara froze. "I know that voice," she whispered. The masked figure pulled the mask off slowly, and she gasped. "You're alive." His face was scarred, eyes sunken, but it was him, the boy from the cage beside hers, the one she thought had died years ago. He smiled weakly. "You didn't keep your promise," he said. Before she could speak, a gunshot rang out from the hallway. She turned, grabbing his arm, pulling him behind the chair. Lights burst. Alarms wailed. Voices shouted in the distance. He looked at her, bleeding. "They followed you." She shook her head. "No, they followed you." And just like that, the past wasn't in the past anymore. It was back, and this time, it had guns. The hallway filled with smoke. The alarm kept screaming, red lights spinning above their heads. Elara pulled the boy behind the steel cabinet and whispered, "How many?" He shook his head. 4, maybe 5. Could be more. I only saw their shadows. His arm was bleeding badly. She tore a piece from her sleeve and wrapped it around his bicep. He winced but didn't complain. "You really came back?" he said, trying to smile. "I thought you were smarter than that." She looked at him, her voice soft. "I didn't come back for this place. I came back for you." Footsteps echoed in the corridor, armed boots. Fast, careful, trained. Whoever was after them knew the layout. Elara peeked from the corner, counted 2 men with automatic rifles sweeping the hall. She whispered, "They'll clear every room. We have 5 minutes, maybe less." He pointed to the back wall. "The old duct system still works. Through there, leads to the power tunnel." She helped him up, slinging his good arm over her shoulder, then pulled a rusted grate from the wall and crawled inside with him. It was tight, full of dust, but safe at least for now. As they moved through the vent, he whispered, "They told me you were dead. After the collapse, they said you ran and triggered a mine. I waited for you." She kept crawling, heart pounding. "I tried to come back, but they found me first. I was taken to base 17. I fought my way out. Took years. Why come back?" he asked again. "Because I still remember your promise," she said quietly, "and I still remember your real name." His breath caught. "Say it," he whispered. "Jonas," she said, his eyes filled with tears. "No one's said that in years." Back on the base, the general's team had tracked the stolen jeep. Maya sat beside the general as the GPS screen blinked. She's in the ghost zone, one officer confirmed. Signal's weak, but it's there. Then we move now, the general ordered. Maya grabbed her gear without hesitation. As the team loaded into transport vehicles, the general looked at her. You don't have to come. Maya shook her head. I do. I was wrong about her. I thought she was a ghost. But she's real. And no one's ever come back from me the way she did for him. The general nodded once. Then stay close. Things buried in that place should have stayed buried. Alara and Jonas dropped into the dark utility tunnel. Pipes ran along the walls. Rats scurried. Water dripped from broken valves. Jonas limped. Beside her, they want the files, he whispered. They don't care about us. They want the experiment logs. The results? Proof that it all happened. Alara clenched her fists. I destroyed most of them before I escaped. But some things were left in the archive room. He looked at her. It's still intact. If they haven't already found it, she said, we need to get there first. Above them, the armed men moved room by room, clearing the lab spaces. Their leader, a tall man in a white coat under tactical armor, tapped his earpiece. They've gone underground. Send the dogs into the lower levels, a voice replied. Affirmative. Thermal scan shows 2 heat signatures. Heading southeast, he smiled. They're going to the archive. Just like I thought. Behind him, another masked soldier asked, should we kill them? The leader shook his head. Not yet. The girl still holds the location key. She was marked with it. He smirked. That brand on her body, it's not just a control mark. It's the final access code. Jonas staggered as they reached a rusted elevator shaft. We can't take this. No power. Then we climb, Alara said. She looped her arms under his and hoisted him up the first ladder rung. We did harder things in the cages. She whispered. He smiled weakly. Yeah, like escaping without food for 6 days and still fighting our way out. She pulled him up one step at a time. This is nothing. They reached the top floor 10 minutes later, both panting. She pushed the emergency release and slid open a side door. The archive room was just ahead. The door was locked, but not for her. She placed her palm on the scanner. Nothing happened. She lifted her shirt and placed her stomach against the old sensor. The scanner blinked. Green dot access granted. The door opened slowly. Inside were rows and rows of metal drawers. Dust, silence, faded documents, charred papers, ancient hard drives. Jonas collapsed against the wall. I never thought I'd see this again. Alara moved to the center drawer, pulled it open, and retrieved a black notebook. She handed it to him. These are the names. The kids, they took all of them. Jonas opened the notebook and his hands trembled. They're all gone. Except Alara turned sharply as the ground vibrated. A dull thud, then another. She looked at him. They found us. Down the corridor, the armed team moved silently. The lead man adjusted his gloves. Don't kill the girl. Wound if necessary. We need her alive. 2 of the soldiers nodded and split into flanking positions. Inside the archive, Alara checked the far wall. There's a back exit through the cooling system. Can you run? Jonas gritted his teeth. For you? Yes. She helped him stand. Then let's go. They hadn't gone 10 feet before the first bullet hit the wall near Ilara's head. She spun, pulled Jonas down, and kicked the side panel open. Through there, she shouted. The soldiers stormed in, firing non-lethal rounds. 1 pellet grazed her arm. She flinched but didn't slow down. She pushed Jonas into the shaft and dove in after him. Above ground, the general's convoy reached the ghost zone perimeter. All vehicles stopped. The terrain was too rough. They continued. On foot, Maya held up the scanner. Thermals still picking up heat. 2 bodies alive, moving underground. A third cluster hostiles. The general pointed forward. Take the east tunnel. We enter through the old sewage vent. Move. In the shaft, Alara pulled Jonas to a stop. We can't outrun them. She handed him the notebook. You keep going? He looked at her in panic. No. She nodded. Yes. You're the one who remembered the names. They need to be heard. He held her wrist. I'm not leaving you. You left once, she said softly. You didn't get a choice. But now you do. She shoved him forward and sealed the shaft behind him. She turned around, waited. The soldiers appeared seconds later. The leader stepped forward. You were always the strongest of them, weren't you? She stared at him. Who are you? He pulled off his helmet. Cold eyes. A face from the past. Dr. Heller, he said. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you. Her jaw tightened. You branded me. He smiled. You cried for 5 hours, then stopped. That's when we knew you were ready. She stepped forward. You tortured children. You turned us into monsters. He shrugged. I made weapons. You were the best one. She launched at him fast. Ruthless years of pain behind every blow. The guards tried to hold her back. She took 2 down before they hit her with an electric baton. She collapsed, twitching. Teller stood over her. Still dangerous. He turned to the others. Load her in the truck. We'll extract the code directly. Before they could lift her, a grenade landed at their feet. Boom. Smoke exploded. Gunfire followed. The general's voice shouted, Move. In Maya and the team stormed the hallway, a full firefight broke out. Ilara crawled toward the wall, dazed. Someone lifted her. She looked up. The general, I told you, he whispered. You're not alone anymore. He fired over her shoulder and dragged her out of the smoke. Maya ran to her. Where's Jonas? Ilara pointed to the shaft. He has the notebook. Moments later, Jonas crawled out from the other side, limping, but alive. He held up the notebook, coughing names. All here. Maya took it. We'll protect it. Behind them, Heller was bleeding, but alive. He shouted through the dust. You think exposing this will fix anything? No one will believe you. The general stared back. They'll believe her scars. He turned to Ilara. She pulled up her shirt. Again, that's time. In front of the entire rescue team. The branded mark glowed under the flashlight. The same code found in old records. Proof no one could ignore. The silence that followed was heavy, and then someone from the medical team whispered, It's real. The ghost project was real. Heller was dragged away in cuffs, still screaming. The general looked at Jonas. You've both survived something impossible. Jonas nodded. We don't want revenge. Ilara added, we want it to stop forever. The general stared into the dark tunnel behind them. What? You two started, he said. We'll finish. But in the distance, another pair of eyes watched. A figure turned and vanished into the shadows. Someone who wasn't caught. Someone who knew the next phase of the program had already begun. And Ilara's fight was far from over. The base was silent when the team returned, not from peace but from shock. News of the underground lab and the firefight had already begun to circulate among the ranks, though no one dared speak of it out loud. Jonas was taken to the infirmary. His wounds were deeper than expected, but he was stable. Ilara sat beside his bed, silent again. The light from the window caught the edge of her cheek, revealing the faint bruises from the fight underground. She hadn't spoken since they returned. Not a single word. Not to the general. Not to Maya. Not to anyone. She just sat there, holding the black notebook filled with names, children, test subjects, ghosts. Maya stood outside the glass window, watching them. She doesn't cry, she said quietly. The general stood beside her. She did once, when she thought Jonas had died. That was the only time I've seen her tears mean weakness. Every other time, they meant war. Maya looked down. The others are talking. They're scared of her. They don't understand what she is. The general nodded. She's a reminder of the lies we buried, of the systems we let run wild. And now she's standing in front of it. I'll live. Maya asked, what happens? Now he didn't answer. He couldn't. Later that evening, a council representative arrived on base by helicopter. Tall, thin, dressed in black. His name was Mr. Kell. He didn't shake hands, didn't smile, just walked straight into the general's office and placed a folder on the desk. You've started something you can't control, he said. The general opened the folder. Inside were images of the underground lab, the bodies, the branded mark on Ilara, the recovered files. These are facts, the general said, not opinions. Kell's smile was cold. Facts don't matter. Control does. And you've lost it. The general stood. You think the world won't care if they see this? Kell shook his head. They'll care. For a few days, then they'll forget. People don't want the truth. They want comfort. And you're giving them nightmares. She deserves justice, the general growled. Kell stepped closer. And what exactly does that look like? A courtroom? A camera? Crew? A public trial where every general, every scientist, every councilman involved goes down with her? The general didn't respond. Kell leaned in. This is bigger than one girl. Don't be a fool. He picked up his folder and left without waiting for permission. The next morning, Ilara was missing again. Her bed was untouched. Jonas sat up, weak but panicking. She wouldn't leave me, he said. Maya ran through the barracks. No sign. The security footage showed her walking calmly through the eastern corridor alone, unarmed. She passed the guard post. No one stopped her. The guards didn't even remember seeing her. It was as if she moved through them like a ghost. The general watched the footage, then turned to Jonas. Did she say anything before she left? Jonas hesitated. Only one thing? What? She said. I hear the others. The general stiffened. What others? Jonas looked down. The ones who didn't make it. She said she hears them in her sleep, calling her, asking why they were left behind. The general turned to Maya. Prep a team. We're going after her, Maya asked. Do we know where she's going? Jonas interrupted. I do. He handed them a small chip. She gave me this last night. Said if anything happened to her again, we'd need it. They plugged the chip into the console. A map appeared, coordinates in the North Mountains. Near an old weather station long decommissioned. But it wasn't just a weather station. The general recognized the zone. It was the second facility, he said. They ran the backup experiments there. Maya stared. You think there are more like her? He nodded slowly. If she hears them, maybe they're not ghosts. Ilara moved quickly through the forest, her backpack strapped tight, her steps calculated. She wasn't running. She was returning to the place where she once begged to die. Her breath was steady, her eyes focused. In her pocket was a locket. Inside it a photo of Jonas when he was 10. She had kept it hidden all these years, a memory she couldn't afford to forget. She reached the mountain ridge by nightfall. In the darkness, the outline of the old station appeared. Broken antennas, faded fences, one surveillance camera still blinking red. She approached the gate, knelt beside it, and pulled back the grass. A hatch. She opened it and climbed down the rusted ladder into the belly of the mountain. The air was cold, metallic. The halls smelled like chemicals and silence. Every step echoed. Her boots scraped across the old tile floor. She walked past empty observation rooms, cracked mirrors, and shattered restraints. Then, from behind a wall, a faint sound. Breathing, not hers. She raised her hand slowly and tapped the wall. The breathing stopped. She whispered, "I'm not one of them." A voice responded, hoarse and weak, "Prove it." She reached into her shirt and pulled it up to show the brand. Silence. Then, the sound of locks unlatching. A panel opened. Behind it stood a boy, maybe 16. Pale, thin eyes, sunken, but very much alive. Behind him 3 others. A girl with a shaved head. A boy in a wheelchair. Another girl who couldn't look straight at her. "Who are you?" one of them asked. Alara stepped forward. "I'm what you were supposed to become." They let her in. She sat with them, shared the last of her water, asked questions. They answered in pieces. "We were left here after the program fell. They never came back. We lived in the dark. One of us died last year. She's still in the holding cell." Ilara felt her throat tighten. "How did you survive?" the boy said. "We had each other." She looked around the cold room. 4 survivors, scarred, broken, but breathing. They hadn't seen the sun in years. Meanwhile, the general's convoy reached the foot of the mountain. Snow had begun to fall. Jonas, now walking with a crutch, insisted on coming. Maya supported him. She went in alone. "We're not letting her stay alone," he said. The general led the way through the trees. A sudden noise stopped them. A click, a landmine. Maya froze. "Trap." The general nodded. "Smart girl." She covered her tracks. He bent down and carefully disarmed it. "She doesn't want company." Jonas looked ahead. "Too bad. She's getting it." Back in the bunker, the boy led Alara to a locked room. Inside was a terminal, still working. Flickering screens showed data feeds, files, names, test results. She stepped toward it. "I can end this," she said. The boy warned. "They'll come if you access that." "I want them to," she replied. She inserted her old chip into the system. The screen blinked. "Access granted." File dump begun. Across the country, hidden council servers began receiving alerts. Someone had opened the GK vault. Back at base, Kel slammed his fist against the table. "She's breached the archives." An aide asked, "Should we activate Protocol Black?" Kel didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Send the Reapers, sir. You heard me. We clean this up now. I want every trace erased." In the mountains, Ilara stood in front of the terminal as data poured onto the screen. Names, dates, footage, doctors discussing procedures on children. Her face flashed by Jonas's face. Even the 4 survivors around her. The girl in the corner began to cry. "They made me forget my brother's name," she whispered. Alara turned. "You remember now, and you're not forgotten anymore." Suddenly the lights cut. Darkness, then footsteps, heavy, tactical. She turned to the others. "Hide, now," the boy protested. "We can fight." "Not yet," she said. "We don't lose anyone tonight." They vanished into crawl spaces and vents. She stood alone in the hallway as the soldiers entered. Black uniforms, red visors, the Reapers. One of them raised his gun. "Surrender now." Ilara didn't move. "You don't scare me anymore." They moved forward. She closed her eyes. Then the hallway lit up as a blast of light tore through the ceiling. The general's team had arrived. Maya fired from above. Jonas dropped down beside Alara. "You thought we wouldn't come?" The Reapers opened fire. Alara ducked and rolled behind a desk, pulling Jonas with her. "You should have stayed at base and missed this reunion." "Never." Gunfire filled the air. Reapers went down. 2 tried to flank from the side, but the 4 survivors emerged from the vents, striking with makeshift weapons. The Reapers hadn't expected resistance from children. But these weren't just children. They were built in fire. The general grabbed Kel's man by the collar. "Tell them to stand down." The man hesitated. The general shoved a recording device in his face. "The whole world's watching now." In the chaos, Alara reached the terminal again. She pressed one final command. "Upload complete." She looked at Jonas. "It's done." He smiled. Then a final explosion rocked the bunker. The ceiling cracked. A beam fell, and everything went black. For the rest of the camp, Sana kept her head down. She followed every order. She ran extra miles, cleaned the mess hall without complaining, and stood silently when others laughed or whispered about her. But one thing stayed the same. Night, after lights out, she trained alone under the stars. Silent punches, quiet tears, hidden fire. Ion watched her from a distance. He wanted to talk to her. He wanted to say sorry for the way he had treated her on the first day. But he didn't know how. Every time he took a step toward her, guilt held him back. He was the one who had made that joke about her past. He was the one who doubted her scars. One morning, the unit woke up to shocking news. Their training officer, LT Bobber, had gone missing during a solo recon drill. His radio had gone silent the night before, and no one had heard from him since. Panic spread through the base. He never breaks protocol, Major Farid said, pacing inside the command tent. Something's wrong. Search teams were formed. The forest surrounding the camp was thick and dangerous. Wild animals, old minefields, and forgotten war traps from decades ago still made the area deadly. The teams were divided into groups of 5, each was given coordinates to search. Sana was placed in the last team again with the same recruits who didn't want her. Ayan, Zaki, Danish, and Rahil. All of them had seen her quiet strength now, but none had spoken to her since the sparring. Mach Stool. They didn't argue when she joined the group. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they had finally begun to respect the fire behind her silence. They entered the forest in the afternoon. The sky was cloudy, the air was heavy. Birds didn't sing, and even the insects seemed to stay quiet. Check the valley by sunset and report back, Ayan said, his voice steady. Everyone nodded. Even Sana. They walked in silence for hours, checking signs, looking for broken branches, pieces of clothing, or footprints. As night began to fall, they reached the edge of an old gorge. It was deeper than they expected and covered in vines. Then they saw it, a torn piece of a uniform caught on a branch. That's Babur's. Zaki whispered. Down there, Rahil pointed. Look, someone's down there. A body, half covered. In mud, not moving. They rushed to the edge and looked down. It was LT Babur. His leg was caught under a fallen tree. He was unconscious, but alive. We need to go down there, Ayan said, pulling out a rope. Are you crazy? That slope is unstable, Danish warned. If we all go, we might cause a landslide. We can't just leave him. Ayan replied. I'll go, Sana said quietly. All the boys turned to her. You Danish laughed nervously. You'll fall before you even reach halfway. I'm the lightest. The ground won't give way so easily, she said. Ayan looked into her eyes. She wasn't scared, not even a little. He nodded. Tie the rope around your waist. We'll lower you slowly. With the rope secured, Sana began her descent. Every step was careful, every breath steady. Mud slipped under her boots, but she kept going, inch by inch. Finally, she reached LT Babur. Sir, she whispered, checking his pulse. Stay with me. His eyes fluttered. He was alive, but weak. She shouted up. He's alive, but his leg is crushed. We'll pull you both up, Ayan called. No, she said. He's too heavy. The slope won't hold. What do we do then? She paused, then looked around. Her eyes landed on a thick vine. An idea sparked. I'm going to tie him to the rope. You pull him up first, I'll climb after. You'll climb without the rope. I'll manage. They argued for a few seconds, but her voice was calm and clear. Trust me. With great care, she tied the unconscious officer to the rope. The team above began pulling. It took all their strength, but slowly, they brought LT Babur to safety. Now it was Sana's turn. She wiped the sweat from her forehead. Her arms ached. Her boots were covered in mud, but her eyes were still steady. She started climbing hand by hand, foot by foot, using roots, rocks, and sheer will. Halfway up, the earth trembled. A rock slipped under her. She slid down a few feet, her arm hitting a sharp edge. Blood ran down her elbow, but she didn't stop. Ayan reached out from above. Grab my hand. She jumped, fingers brushing his butt, slipped again. Then she did something no one expected. She pulled off her jacket. Blood stained her undershirt, but it wasn't the blood that shocked them. It was the mark burned into her side. A deep, old branded scar, a military symbol. Not just any symbol. The elite Black Wolf unit. A unit that had been disbanded years ago. A unit known only in whispers. A unit made of ghosts. Everyone froze. Ayan stared. What? What is that? Sana didn't answer. She climbed up the last few feet, grabbed Ayan's hand, and was finally pulled to safety. They all stood around her, stunned. No one spoke. Rahil broke the silence. You're one of them. The Black Wolves, Sana didn't confirm. She didn't deny. She just looked at them with tired eyes and said, help me carry him. They carried LT Babur back to base. The medics rushed him inside the tent. The commanding officer, General Abbas, came out the moment he heard. He saw Babur on the stretcher, and then he saw her, his eyes locked on her side. The mark was still visible through her torn shirt. His expression changed. First shock, then understanding, then something else. Something heavy. He turned to the others. You all, go inside, now. They obeyed, confused and scared. Only Sana stayed. She didn't speak. The general walked closer. That mark, I never thought I'd see it again. Still, she said nothing. Who trained you? Silence. Who gave you that brand? She looked him in the eye. You did? She said softly. He stepped back as if he'd been hit. His face turned pale. Then, without another word, she turned and walked toward the barracks. But what no one saw was the look on the general's face. It wasn't just shock. It was guilt. Deep, heavy guilt and fear. Because he remembered now. He remembered the girl he thought had died in that fire years ago. He remembered the mission they erased from the records. He remembered the secret they buried. But she didn't forget, and she was back. The moment Arzu stepped into the special training yard, a heavy silence fell. She wasn't wearing her uniform, just a plain shirt and track pants, but there was something in her eyes that made even the cocky recruits pause. She walked past The bench press station, past the obstacle course, past the new trainee who had mocked her limp yesterday. Everyone turned to look. Nobody spoke. Colonel Mahmoud stood near the command line, arms crossed. "You're 5 minutes late," he said sternly. "I'm 5 years early," she replied, her voice steady. The recruits chuckled, but Mahmoud didn't. He knew what she meant. He had read her sealed file now, and though the army had tried to bury her story, the truth had a way of crawling back. "All right," Mahmoud said. "Today's drill is simple. Survival simulation. 5 challenges. Only 2 minutes per task. Let's see how the broken soldier performs." He didn't mean to insult her, but that's how it sounded. The recruit smirked again. Arzu just nodded. The first challenge was the fire crawl. Hot sand and barbed wire, low ceiling. She got on the ground without hesitation and dragged herself forward, elbows slicing through dirt, sweat on her back. The boy who laughed earlier had already gotten stuck. His shirt tore, and he screamed when the wire grazed his skin. Arzu didn't stop. Her shirt caught too, but she rolled, adjusted, and pushed ahead. She finished first. The second challenge, rope climb. With one leg, it should have been impossible, but Arzu didn't even blink. She grabbed the rope, tied it around her good leg once, and used her arms to hoist herself up. Inch by inch, pain burning in her shoulders, she rose. The recruits below started clapping. By the time she rang the bell at the top, everyone was silent again this time, not in mockery, but awe. Colonel Mahmoud scribbled notes, but his face showed no emotion. The third challenge, combat dummy bun. The dummy was heavy, and most failed to even lift it. Arzu took a moment, stared at it, then approached sideways, used a spin move that surprised even the instructor, and brought the dummy down with a loud thud. "Where did she learn that?" whispered someone. "She used to teach it." Someone, Creed replied. Fourth target shooting. 10 targets, 10 bullets. She took the rifle, adjusted it, aimed with one eye narrowed. 10 shots, 10 hits. The recruits were no longer clapping, they were watching like students. Hungry for knowledge, hungry to understand how this woman who had limped in now stood taller than any of them. The final challenge, a psychological one. They had to stand blindfolded, listening to recordings of real battlefield sound screams, gunshots, children crying, bombs dropping. The point was to measure stress response. Most recruits trembled. One even cried. Arzu didn't flinch. Her hand curled into a fist once, but her lips never moved. When the audio stopped, the room was quiet. Too quiet then. A sudden whistle broke the air. Colonel Mahmoud clapped. "Just once. That's enough," he said. "You've proven your point." But Arzu didn't move. Not yet. She turned to the recruits. Her eyes were burning now, not with pain, but fire. "You all judged me on my limp, on my scars, on my silence. But remember, this I didn't come back for sympathy. I came back for the next war, and I came to teach you what I learned when no one came to save me." That sentence hung in the air. Mahmoud stepped forward. Recruit Khan, he called the boy who had mocked her, stepped forward. The boy walked out, head low. "Apologize." Mahmoud said. "I'm sorry," the boy whispered. Arzu looked at him. "You don't have to be sorry, just don't forget." Everyone nodded, and then, just as they began to admire her again, a jeep screeched into the training yard. Dust flew. A senior officer stepped out, Magar General Faison. The air changed instantly. Faison walked straight to Mahmoud and said, "Pack her things. She's being deployed." Everyone froze. "What?" Mahmoud asked. "She just returned, she hasn't been cleared." Faison cut him off. "There's been a situation. Hostages. Deep border. We need someone who understands the Tehran, the language." But Mahmoud started. "She's the only one left who knows the enemy commander's code name," Faison said quietly. Eyes widened. Arzu didn't ask questions. She just nodded. "I'll go." "But you haven't even been fully re-enlisted," Mahmoud protested. "I never stopped serving," she replied. As Faison turned to leave, he paused. "Oh, and one more thing," he said, turning to the recruits. "She'll be leading the team, all of you." Gasps filled the yard. The boy who had insulted her looked stunned. Another whispered, "We're following her." Mahmoud looked at Arzu. "Are you ready?" She smiled faintly. "I've always been ready." As she walked toward the jeep, recruits stepped aside on their own. No one dared block her path now. She climbed in without hesitation, but just as the vehicle started, someone shouted, "Wait." It was the youngest recruit, a girl who had been quiet all morning. She stepped forward and said, "Ma'am, what happened to you out there the first time?" Arzu looked back. She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly pulled back her shirt again, just enough to reveal a small tattoo near her ribs. It wasn't just any tattoo. It was the symbol of a secret operation that had never been mentioned publicly, not even in military records. Only those who had survived it carried the mark. Gasps followed. One recruit whispered, "That mission was a death sentence. She survived." Someone else replied, but Faison looked troubled. As the jeep drove off, he muttered to himself, "That tattoo? It wasn't supposed to exist anymore." Suspense hung in the air like a storm cloud because now, the truth wasn't just about her strength, it was about what she had lived through. what the army tried to erase, and why they were sending her back into the fire. And this time, she wasn't going alone. Arzu stared ahead, eyes hard, heart heavy. She knew this mission wasn't just a call of duty, it was a trap. Tara sat quietly in the dark corner of the military bus, her face turned to the window, her eyes lost in thought. The wheels of the bus rolled over the dirt road as they left the remote training camp. Everyone inside was exhausted and emotionally. But Tara wasn't just tired, she felt empty, like something inside her had been torn apart. The scars on her back throbbed every time the bus hit a bump, but she didn't wince. She was used to the pain. Across from her sat Mia and Raj, whispering about what had happened in the training yard that morning. Everyone saw it. Tara had collapsed during the endurance drill. The instructor screamed at her to get up, but she didn't move. Only later did they find out she hadn't eaten for 2 days. She had given her food to a younger recruit who had fainted from hunger the day before. No one had thanked her. Some even laughed. One guy called her stupid, but when the general arrived, things changed. The general had never been seen so angry. He stormed into the medical tent, pushed past the doctor, and demanded to know who had let this happen. But Tara said nothing. She just sat there, bandaged, and pale and in for a moment. She did something none of them expected. She slowly pulled up her shirt, just enough to show the mark burned into her side. It wasn't just a scar. It was a military symbol and old unit insignia no one used anymore, one that only legends talked about. Now, as the bus bumped its way back to the main base, the whispers had turned to silence. No one knew what to say. Tara was no longer just the weak girl. She was something else now, something unknown, something powerful. That they reached the base just after sunset. The sky was painted with soft orange and purple. As they stepped off the bus, a line of senior officers stood waiting. At the center was the general. His face was hard to read, but his eyes were locked on Tara. "Cadet Tara," he said firmly. "You're with me?" The others watched in silence as Tara walked toward him. Her steps were slow but steady. She didn't ask questions. She just followed. They entered a quiet wing of the base, one rarely used. The walls were lined with old photographs and medals from past wars. Tara's eyes caught one photo. It showed a group of soldiers standing proudly in the snow, their faces worn but determined. In the middle stood a woman who looked like her. The general noticed. "That's your mother, isn't it?" he asked. Tara nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. She was one of the strongest soldiers I ever trained," he said, his voice softer now. "She saved lives, changed missions. But they erased her name, called her a traitor when she tried to stop something she knew was wrong." Tara's hands curled into fists. "They killed her," she whispered, "and said it was an accident." The general nodded. "I know. And I did nothing. I was young, afraid. I let them silence her." Tara turned to him. Her eyes were not filled with anger but with something deeper. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you carry her fire," he said, "and because it's time the truth came out." He led her into a small room at the end of the hallway. Inside was a metal box sealed and covered in dust. He opened it. Inside were files, photographs, and a black notebook. "This is everything they buried," he said. "Your mother's mission reports, her warnings, her final message." Tara picked up the notebook with trembling hands. The first page had her mother's handwriting. "If someone finds this, tell my daughter the truth. Tell her not to trust the ones in power. They will smile to your face and stab your back in silence." Tara sat down slowly, flipping through the pages. Every note, every line was a warning. There was talk of illegal experiments, secret camps, and a shadow unit within the army working for private weapons companies. Her mother had discovered it, tried to expose it, and they silenced her. The general sat beside her. "I can't fix the past, but I can help you expose them." Tara looked at him, unsure. "Why now?" "Because I see what they'll do to you if you keep walking alone. And because maybe helping you is how I make peace with what I didn't do back then." She took a deep breath. Her heart pounded. She had always wanted the truth, but now that it was in front of her, it felt heavy, dangerous. Outside, the wind picked up. Night had fallen. A storm was coming. Back in the common area, the other cadets sat quietly, glancing at the hallway where Tara had disappeared. Some were curious, some were scared, and some, like Raj, were finally beginning to realize they had misjudged her. "She's not like the rest of us," Mia whispered. Raj nodded. "No, she's something else." The next morning, Tara walked into the parade ground in full uniform, her head held high. But now, on her chest, she wore a pin that none of the others recognized, a symbol of her mother's old unit. The pin had been hidden in the box, a forgotten relic. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Where did she get that? Isn't that unit disbanded? No one's worn that in decades." The general stepped out behind her. "Attention," he barked. The cadets stood at once. "From today," he said, "Cadet Tara is reassigned." Gasps. "She will work directly under me, leading a new investigation into long-buried military misconduct. Anyone who stands in her way stands in mine." He looked at Tara. "You have full access. Every file, every location, every officer." Tara nodded. "Yes, sir." She turned to walk away, but paused, then looked back at the others. "I don't want your respect," she said calmly. I want your honesty. If you're hiding something, step forward. If you're tired of being silent, join me. But if you're too scared, stay out of my path." And with that, she left. Later that night, Tara sat alone in her new room. The notebook lay open beside her. She flipped to the last page. Her mother had written one final line. "One day you'll stand where I fell, and you'll rise higher than they ever let me." Tara smiled faintly. Her eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't wipe them away. A knock at the door. She opened it. Mia stood there. "I want to help," she said. Tara nodded. Behind her, Raj stepped forward. "Me too." Then another, and another. The truth was no longer hidden, but deep in the shadows of the military command. Someone else was watching. A man in a gray suit picked up the phone. "She's found the files," he said coldly. "Move to phase 2. The voice on the other end replied, "Understood. Eliminate her before she talks." Tara didn't know it yet, but the war was no longer about scars. It was about survival. And what came next would test everything she believed in. The rain had been falling for hours. The camp was quiet, except for the soft patter of water on tents and muddy ground. Inside one tent, Ara sat alone, her eyes fixed on the flickering flame of a small oil lamp. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a worn-out photo of her squad. All their faces smiling, proud, brave now felt like ghosts from another time. She traced her finger gently over one face. Tariq, her best friend, her brother in arms. Her heart twisted as she remembered his last words. "Promise me, Ara, never stop fighting for truth." Outside, General Raza walked past with heavy boots, his coat soaked and his mood darker than the sky. He had just returned from a strategy meeting with Colonel Haseb, who kept pushing for Ara's immediate removal from the base. "She's a distraction," Hasib had said. "A soldier with secrets is a risk." But Raza knew something deeper was going on. He could feel it. Tara wasn't the danger. She was in danger. That evening, orders came in. A high-stakes operation was planned for the next morning. An undercover mission. Dangerous. Raza looked at the list of selected officers and saw Hasib had added Ara's name. His jaw tightened. "She's not ready," Raza said aloud. Hasib shrugged. "Then she prove it." That night, Ara packed her gear in silence. She didn't argue. She didn't complain. She just looked at the photo one last time and slid it into her pocket. As she zipped up her bag, she heard footsteps. It was Sanam, her roommate, and one of the only people who still spoke to her. Sanam whispered, "Why are you even going on this mission? They're setting you up. You know it." "I don't have a choice," Ara said quietly. "I gave a promise. I'll keep it." Sanam reached into her own bag and pulled out a small locket. "Take this. My mother gave it to me before she passed. For protection." Ara hesitated. "I can't just wear it," Sanam insisted, placing it in Ara's hand. At 0400 hours, the team set out. Ara rode in silence beside Hasib and two other officers. Their destination, a suspected hideout in the mountains used by a rogue paramilitary group. The fog was thick, the roads slippery. As they neared the checkpoint, the vehicle suddenly swerved. A shot rang out. Tires burst. The truck crashed. Ara hit her head hard, but stayed conscious. Smoke rose from the engine. She heard shouting, then gunfire. 2 officers were down. Hasib had disappeared. Ara dragged herself from the wreckage, bleeding from her forehead. She pulled out her sidearm and crawled to cover. She waited, listened, counted footsteps, then silence. She crept through the trees, trying to make her way back toward the camp. Her radio was broken. Her map was wet and torn. The mountain fog wrapped around her like a trap. She walked for hours. No food, no direction. Only the sound of her own breathing kept her moving. As night fell, she finally spotted a light, a wooden hut, in the distance. She approached with caution. When she got close, she saw the Pakistani flag flying from the side. "Military safe house." She knocked. The door creaked open, and an old man in a faded uniform looked at her. He asked, "Falcon 7?" she whispered. He stepped aside, letting her in. Inside it was warm. Ara collapsed on the wooden floor. She had lost a lot of blood. "Rest here," the man said. "Tomorrow we send for help." When she woke up the next morning, General Raza was standing at the door. "Ara," he said, "are you all right?" She tried to sit up. "Sir, the mission was compromised." Hasib, he vanished right when the attack started. Raza didn't look surprised.
"I had that."
"Thought so." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small recorder. This was found near the crash site. He played the tape. Ara's eyes widened as she heard Hasib's voice whispering to someone. "She's not coming back. Make sure it looks like an ambush." Ara's face turned pale. "He tried to kill me," Raza nodded. "He wanted to remove you quietly, but now we have proof." Ara's voice broke. "Sir, there's more. I think he was the one who leaked Tariq's location during the cross-border AP last year. That's why he died." Raza's eyes darkened. "Then we'll find out, and we'll expose him." But just as he said that, a gunshot shattered the window. "A sniper." The old man yelled, "Get down." Raza pulled Ara behind a table. The sniper fired again. "They found us," Ara said. The safe house was no longer safe. Raza handed Ara a rifle. "You cover the back. I'll take the front." They moved like shadows, silent, sharp. Ara's heart pounded. Her hands shook, but she focused. She saw movement. A figure approaching the back door. She waited. Closer then, dash bang. She fired. The figure dropped. More footsteps. Another shot. This time from Raza. Then. Silence. The storm passed. When they checked outside, 3 men in civilian clothes lay in the mud, all armed, all dead. Raza examined their gear. Not rebels, he said. Private contractors. Someone paid them, Ara whispered Hasid. That night, back at base, Ara was taken to the infirmary. Her wounds were treated, her name was cleared. But the biggest surprise came 2 days later. Ara was called to the central tent for a full hearing. She entered, expecting another round of questions. But what she saw left her breathless. General Raza stood beside an old screen. On it, the image of a satellite map. He pressed a button. This, he said, is the camp where Hasiba has gone into hiding. After the failed ambush, he didn't return to base. He vanished. But we found traces of communication between him and foreign arms dealers. Ara felt her chest tighten. We're sending a team to bring him in, Raza continued. And I want you on it, sir, she asked. You're the only one who has faced him and lived. You know his tricks. And, Raza added, his voice firm, he tried to silence you. Now, you will be his reckoning. Ara nodded slowly, and then Raza said something that made her blink. You're being promoted, Lieutenant Ara Khan? Ara, lips parted in shock. She hadn't expected this. She thought they would just let her go quietly, but instead, they trusted her, believed her. The room clapped. Sanam smiled through tears, but as Ara stood there, the applause fading, her heart felt heavy, because the real war was just beginning, and what Haseb knew, what secrets he still carried, might shake the entire army. General Malik stood at the edge of the camp, his hands behind his back, watching the early morning sun rise over the dusty training ground. The soldiers were already awake, doing their drills, but his eyes weren't on them. His eyes were searching, for her. Sana hadn't reported for the morning drill. Not like her. She was always early, always ready, always silent, but present. Something was wrong. He called for Lieutenant Babar. Find Cadet Sena. Bring her to me. Now, he ordered. Babar didn't ask questions. He simply saluted and rushed off. General Malik turned his back to the sun. A cold feeling settled in his chest. Sana's performance in the last 2 months had been unbelievable. She had outrun the boys. She had won in hand-to-hand combat. She had solved every strategic test with speed and precision. But she never spoke about herself. Not once. He remembered the moment he saw the scar under her shirt, the lightning-shaped mark just below her shoulder. It had frozen him. A long-lost memory had returned. He hadn't told anyone, not even Babar, but he needed to be sure. He needed answers. And today, he would get them. 10 minutes later, Lieutenant Babar returned, his face pale. Sir, she's not in her room. Did you check the infirmary? Yes, sir, she's not there either, but what? There's a note? General Malik grabbed the piece of paper. It was folded neatly. The handwriting was clean, small, and careful. Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't come here to impress anyone. I came because I needed to know the truth. You saw the mark. You already know part of it. Please don't follow me. Let me finish what I started. Sana. Malik's heart thumped hard. She had left, without a trace. Get me the security footage. Every camera from midnight till now, he said sharply. An hour later, the footage revealed her sneaking out in a hoodie, avoiding the cameras like a professional. She had planned it. She didn't just disappear. She vanished on purpose. But where did she go? He stared at the last frame, her walking out the back gate, head down, backpack on. Why now? He whispered. Meanwhile, Sana was on a bus heading toward a small village near the border, the same place her mother had mentioned years ago, before she died. She remembered the story like it was yesterday. Her mother had whispered it to her while coughing in pain. A secret base, a betrayal, a man who once led soldiers but vanished. Her father, the man she never knew. The mark on her shoulder, one she shared with that man, was the only connection she had. She had finally found a lead. An old soldier who had served with her father. He lived in the village now, under a fake name. People said he had gone mad. But Sana knew better. Soldiers don't go mad without reason, and she needed to hear his side of the story. The bus jolted to a stop. Sana grabbed her bag and stepped out. The village was quiet. Dusty roads, small houses. People stared at her as she walked past. A girl in army training gear didn't belong here, but she didn't care. She found the man's house at the edge of the village, an old shack with broken windows. She knocked, no answer. She knocked again. Still silence. I know who you are, she called out. You knew my father. I need to know the truth. There was movement inside. A figure slowly opened the door. A thin man with gray hair and tired eyes stared at her. Who are you? He asked. I'm Sana, daughter of Captain Rayan. The man froze. His eyes welled up. Rayan's daughter. Yes, please. Tell me everything. He let her in. The house smelled of smoke and old papers. He offered her water. She didn't take it. I served with Rayan in Unit 27, the man began. We were more than soldiers. We were family. But something happened. A mission went wrong. And your father was blamed for something he didn't do. They called him a traitor, but he wasn't, Sana said firmly. No, he wasn't. He tried to expose corruption in the chain of command. He found files, secret deals, arms smuggling, black money, but the higher-ups didn't want that truth out. They shut him down, quietly, and those files? They disappeared. Where is he now? The old man shook his head. Dead. They made it look like a desert ambush, but it was an execution. Sanaa's throat tightened. Why didn't anyone speak up? We were scared? I was scared. And after that, I ran. Changed my name. Lived like a ghost. Sana stood up, her body shook with anger and grief. I'm not scared. I will finish what he started. She walked out without another word, her hands clenched, her mind racing. She didn't see the man behind the tree across the road, watching her. Back at the military base, General Malik received a report from a retired officer who had once been stationed at the same border village. He was now a private investigator. Sanaa's there. She met with Imshiz, the ex-unit commander. Malik closed his eyes. Everything was falling into place. The truth Sana was chasing. It was the same truth he had buried years ago because he was there too. He had been young then. Loyal to the system. He didn't question the orders. But he remembered Rayan. Brave, honest, unshakable. And that night, when Rayan disappeared, Malik had been ordered to lead the mission. Only now did he realize the weight of what he had done. Lieutenant Babar walked in. Sir, what's the next step? We go after her, Malik said. But not to stop her. Then why? To protect her from what's coming. Far away, Sana checked into a cheap motel. She opened her backpack and pulled out a small USB. The only thing her mother had hidden in the house, a clue. It had encrypted files. She connected it to her laptop. A password prompt appeared. She tried her father's name. It didn't work. She tried her mother's birthday. Still nothing. Then she typed, UNIT 27 truth. The screen blinked. The files opened. Names, amounts, photos, documents. Her eyes widened. Everything was there. Everything they had killed her father for. She copied it all to a second drive. Suddenly, a loud knock on her motel door made her jump. She froze. Knock, knock. Louder now. Room service. A deep voice said. She hadn't ordered anything. She grabbed the drive and slipped it into her boot. Quietly, she moved to the window. There were two men outside, not hotel staff. She pushed open the window and climbed out just as the door burst open. They were here for the files. She ran through the back alley. Through the night, not looking back. She had no choice. She had to get this truth to someone who could protect it, and there was only one person left. The sun had just begun to rise when the base buzzed with unusual movement. General Aslam stood near the helipad, his boots firm on the ground, his arms crossed, and his eyes scanning the horizon. A coded message had arrived just 2 hours ago. A group of insurgents had crossed the northern border, and a rescue team had gone silent. They were feared captured or worse. Among the missing was Major Farah. Lieutenant Omar stood a few feet behind the general. His face looked tired but determined. Sir, he said quietly, we still haven't received any signal from the team. No GPS, no sound, nothing. It's like they vanished. Aslam didn't speak immediately. His jaw tightened. She's too smart to get caught like that. Something's off, he said. Then he turned to Omar. Send out 2 surveillance drones now. I want every rock and tree in that valley scanned. Meanwhile, deep in the hills near the disputed zone, Farah pressed her back against a cold boulder. Her uniform was torn, her arm bleeding, but her eyes were still sharp. She wasn't alone beside her. 2 soldiers lay unconscious, one with a head injury, the other barely breathing. She had managed to drag them into a small cave after their vehicle had hit an IED. The explosion wasn't fatal, but it made communication impossible, and the insurgents were close. She looked at the injured men, then pulled out her tiny field notebook. She scribbled a message using a pen with almost no ink left. Alive, injured, no signal. Stay quiet, moving at sunset. She knew she had to get out of there with the men, even if it meant crawling. That night, she tied torn pieces of her uniform to create a makeshift sling for one soldier, and a stretcher using broken branches. For the other, she didn't sleep. Her ears listened to every sound, and her heart beat like a drum every time leaves. Our USTLED. At base camp. General Aslam paced the floor of the operations room. A technician called out, Sir, one of the drones caught heat signatures 3 bodies, moving slowly east, near the dry riverbed. Aslam rushed to the screen. Zoom in. Focus on that image. The drone camera revealed a faint image. One person was pulling something, dragging it. The movement was slow, weak, but purposeful. That's her, Aslam whispered. He grabbed the radio. Team Bravo, move now. Fast extraction. Bring medical support, and tell them to expect resistance. The rescue mission was launched immediately. Aslam stayed back but didn't sleep. His eyes remained on the drone feed, watching every movement, afraid that something might go wrong again. Back in the forest, Farah was now using all her remaining energy. Her hands were bruised from dragging the stretcher over sharp rocks. Her lips were dry, and she had no water left. Suddenly, she froze. Voices, foreign language. She ducked behind a bush, her hand going to the tiny knife she had strapped to her ankle. Through the leaves, she saw 2 armed men, scanning the area with rifles. Farah's heart pounded. She waited until they passed, then quickly moved her injured team into a hollow trench covered by dry grass. She lay beside them, motionless, like a stone, and stayed like that for nearly an hour. Finally, she heard the sound of choppers in the sky. Relief flushed over her, but she didn't move yet. She waited until she saw a green smoke flare drop a few meters away. Friendly signal. With all her remaining strength, she rose and waved, her hand weakly, then collapsed. General Aslam stood at the base when the helicopter touched down. The side door opened, and medics jumped out first, carefully carrying the 2 unconscious soldiers. Then they helped Farah, who was barely able to walk. Her face was pale, her lips cracked, and her eyes swollen, but she was alive. Aslam walked toward her, his face unreadable. She looked up, her legs trembling, and saluted. Mission not complete. Sir, she whispered, but they're alive. He didn't salute back. Instead, he stepped forward and caught her before she fell. For the first time in years, the base saw General Aslam cry. Farah was moved to the medical bay. 4 fluids flowed into her arm, and she slipped into deep sleep. The other 2 soldiers underwent surgery and survived. Aslam visited them all, one by one, but he stayed the longest beside Farah's bed. He didn't speak. He just sat quietly, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest. News spread fast. Every soldier on base spoke only one name, that day. Farah. Her bravery had become legend. But as the doctors worked, they discovered something strange. The bruises and marks on her back didn't match the timeline of the explosion. Some were older, some recent, and her arm had a long, thin scar that looked like a surgical mark, not a battlefield injury. The head doctor looked confused. He walked out to find the general. Sir, may I speak with you? Aslam nodded. Something's not right, the doctor said. Her injuries, they don't all make sense, especially this scar on her right arm. It looks like a transplant scar. And her spinal x-ray, well, it shows signs of older damage. Damage we weren't told about. Aslam's face changed. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked away in silence. That night, when Farah woke up briefly, she saw a shadow sitting at the corner of her room. She whispered, General. He stepped forward and sat beside her. You'd once said you had nothing left to lose, he said quietly. Now I think you have everything to protect, including your truth. She looked away. He added, I didn't ask before, because I respected your silence. But now, the base deserves to know what makes you different, what you're hiding under that skin of courage. She didn't answer, but her eyes filled with tears. The next morning, Farah called for a meeting. She asked for all officers, including the young recruits, to gather in the hall. No one knew what to expect. As she walked in slowly, with a medical support stick in her hand, silence filled the room. She stood in front of them, breathing deeply. Then, without a word, she pulled up the sleeve of her shirt and revealed the scar on her arm. A few gasped. It was the mark of a deep surgery muscle reconstruction. She turned slightly, showing her back. A long vertical scar ran from her neck to her lower spine. I wasn't born a soldier, she began. I became one after I was rebuilt. She explained that years ago, before joining the army, she was hit by a truck while trying to save a child. Her spine shattered. Her right arm stopped working. Doctors said she'd never walk again. But she fought. With surgeries, therapy, and pain, she stood again. Not for herself, but for something bigger. I joined this uniform not to prove my strength, she said, but to prove that strength is not only in the body, it's in the will. The room remained silent. No one moved. No one blinked. Then, suddenly, one young recruit stood up and clapped. Another followed. Soon the entire room was on their feet, clapping and cheering, not just for a hero, but for a human who broke all limits. Outside the hall, General Aslam stood alone. His eyes were filled with pride. He didn't go in. He didn't need to. He had already seen enough. But as he turned to walk away, a voice behind him said, You were right. I did have something to hide. He turned to see Farah standing there, tired but smiling. And now? He asked. She looked up at the flag waving above the base. Now, she said, I have nothing to hide and everything to fight for. But, just as she walked back inside, a silent alert buzzed on the general's phone. A new threat had entered the border, and this time, it was personal.